The woman had waited until the sun dipped low, when the heat loosened its grip on the land and the ranch grew quiet enough for confessions. She stood at the edge of the porch, half in shadow, half in light, as if unsure which part of herself she was allowed to offer. Her dress pulled tight at the seams from years of mending and remending, and dust clung to the hem like it had claimed her before anyone else could. She kept her hands folded over her stomach, not to hide it, but to steady herself. The rancher rocked once in his chair, the wood creaking beneath him. He didn't tell her to speak, but silence has a way of pressing people forward. Her eyes stayed on the floorboards as she swallowed hard. The words had lived in her throat for years, rehearsed in the dark, shaped by every sideways glance and unspoken judgment. "No one loves a fat girl, sir," she said at last. The sentence came out softer than she intended, like it was ashamed of itself. The cicadas filled the pause, loud and relentless. She took a breath, forcing the rest out before fear could drag it back. "But I can cook." The admission stripped her bare. It was not flirtation, not self-pity, but survival dressed as honesty. Cooking was the one thing no one could take from her. She had fed brothers who never thanked her, neighbors who spoke her name only when they were hungry. She had learned how hunger could make people kind for a moment. The rancher's gaze moved over her, slow and careful. He noticed the way her shoulders were braced, ready for rejection. He noticed the steadiness in her stance, the kind born from being told no so many times that yes no longer felt necessary. He said nothing, and in that silence, she waited, heart loud, dignity trembling, unsure if she had just offered him her only shield or laid down her last one. The rancher did not answer her right away. He shifted his weight against the porch post, the rough wood pressing through his shirt as if to keep him grounded. The land stretched behind him, wide and unforgiving, a place that had taught him to measure things slowly. People included. He had learned that the loudest promises were usually the weakest. "Cooking fills a belly," he said at last, his voice even, without cruelty. "But it don't tell me who you are when the work don't end." His eyes stayed on her face, not drifting, not softening either. He wasn't testing her pride, he was testing her truth. She straightened, as though bracing for a blow that never came. "I rise before light," she said. "I mend what's torn instead of throwing it away. I know when to stretch a pot and when not to lie about it." Her hands unclasped, then folded again, restless but honest. She spoke of gathering eggs with cracked fingers in winter, of scrubbing floors until the water went gray, of silence she'd learned to live inside without complaint. The rancher listened. He heard no pleading in her voice, no attempt to charm him into sympathy. Each word was laid down like a tool, simple, worn, dependable. He noticed how she didn't speak of dreams, only of duties. That told him more than any fancy story ever could. A breeze cut through the yard, lifting dust in the loose edge of her sleeve. She hesitated, then lifted her eyes to meet his. They were steady, darker than fear, heavier than hope. In that look, he saw a woman used to being measured and found lacking, yet still standing. He nodded once, not in approval, not yet, but in acknowledgement. Whatever decision he made, he knew this much: she wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to be counted. The rancher drew in a slow breath, the kind he took before branding a restless steer or speaking a truth that could not be pulled back. He stepped off the porch, boots sinking slightly into the dirt, closing the distance between them, not to loom, but to level the ground. The woman stiffened, instinctively ready to shrink, but he stopped an arm's length away. "Love," he said, the word sounding rough, unused. "Love ain't a reward for suffering, and it sure ain't payment for usefulness." His eyes held hers, steady as fence posts driven deep. "You don't earn it by apologizing for taking up space." The woman felt the words before she understood them. No one had ever spoken to her as if her body were not a debt she owed the world. Her throat tightened, but she did not look away. She would not dishonor herself by pretending this didn't matter. The rancher gestured toward the land, toward the barns weathered by years of wind and work. "This place don't care how a person looks. It cares how they show up. Dawn after dawn, storm after storm." His voice softened, not with pity, but with something heavier. "Experience. I've buried folks who were loved easy and worked hard. I've buried folks who were neither. Pretty fades, steady stays." She listened, hands trembling now, not from fear but from the strange effort of standing fully present. The idea that her worth might not be conditional felt dangerous, like stepping onto ground that might give way. Still, she stayed. "I won't promise you romance," he continued. "I won't dress respect up as kindness. But if you stay, you'll be paid fair, fed fair, and spoken to straight." He paused, then added, "Quieter, and you won't have to make yourself smaller to belong here." Something broke open in her chest. Not a rush of joy, but a deep, quiet relief. She nodded once, firm and final. In that nod was her answer to more than the rancher's offer. It was an answer to every voice that had taught her to beg. Night settled over the ranch like a deep breath finally let out. Inside the house, lamplight softened the rough edges of the room, turning scars in the table into stories instead of damage. The woman moved through the kitchen with calm purpose, not hurried, not eager to impress. For the first time in years, her hands did not shake as she cooked. This was not a performance. It was an offering freely given. She seasoned by instinct, tasting once, trusting herself. The food was simple. Bread warm enough to steam when torn, beans slow cooked until they held together like a promise kept. When she set the plates down, she did not apologize for the portions or explain their worth. She sat when invited, back straight, claiming the chair as if it had always been hers. The rancher ate in silence at first. He noticed how the house felt fuller, not louder, but steadier. The food settled heavy and honest in his stomach, the kind that stayed with a man through long hours. He watched her laugh once, short, surprised, like it had escaped without permission, and something in his chest shifted. Not desire, recognition. Across the table, she realized she was breathing differently. Easier. No one was watching her plate. No one was measuring her against absence or want. The space between bites filled with quiet respect instead of judgment. She had spent her life believing love would arrive as rescue or rejection. Instead, it arrived as room to exist without explanation. When the meal ended, the rancher pushed his chair back and nodded toward the empty dishes. "Tomorrow starts early," he said. It wasn't dismissal, it was inclusion. As she carried the plates away, the woman understood something she'd never been taught. Dignity did not need to be earned through usefulness alone. And the rancher, listening to the steady rhythm of her steps, knew his reply had already taken root, not in words, but in the simple, shared act of a full table.